This is Victoria Ekegren performing an interview on the, what's the date today, 29th? 29th of October, 1999, in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. And I'm interviewing George Hawkins, and he was in the 17th. So first of all, tell me where you were born.
Jamesville, Missouri.
Jamesville, Missouri. And how was it growing up in Jamesville, Missouri?
Well, Jamesville, Missouri doesn't exist anymore, so I moved away when I was a kid, about 4 years old, and came back when I was about 14. And it's out in the country. It's a rural area. There's farmland, farms, and no electricity back in those days. And
tell me about your father.
Well,
what did he do for a living?
Farmer.
What are some of the things that you learned from your father?
Well, let's see. He's been gone for many years, and I'm real old, so that's hard to remember.
Tell me, do you know, what about your mother? What did she do?
Well, she died when she was 28, so I was 8 years old when she died, so I can't remember much about her.
Did you have any brothers? And tell me about your brothers and sisters.
I have one sister that's 2 years younger.
And what kind of things did you guys do on your spare time when you were kids?
Wait, you have to speak up a little.
What did you do on your spare time?
Well, what spare time?
So you helped out your dad with the farm?
Oh yeah, on a farm you don't have much spare time, it seems like, so.
So, tell me how it was living back in those days.
Well, let's see, back in 1930s it was pretty bad. It was dusty, drouthy, depression. If anybody had a nickel, they were pretty lucky back then. I don't think anybody ever had a dollar, hardly, so that's how bad it was. And I going up till World War II started is about the way it was. I mean, that's when prosperity started, when the war started. So.
Where did you attend school?
Next to high school. That's about 8 miles northeast of Jamesville.
And how high did you go in school?
I just went 3 years high school. So.
Okay. How let's see. How did you first hear about the war starting? World War II. How did you hear about it? Pearl Harbor, or on the radio, or?
Oh, it was building up for a long time before it happened, and then when Pearl Harbor came, well, we knew it was on for sure then.
Was your dad or any of your relatives in World War I?
No, Dad wasn't. I had one uncle, I think, that was in. Went to West Point, and the war ended before he got to go overseas. But that's all I was ever supposed to be in World War I.
Okay. So what did your father think about when World War II started?
Oh, I wasn't at home then, so he knew it was coming too, I guess.
So what were you working with or doing at the time when World War II started?
Oh, I was out in Oakland, California, and worked in the shipyards. And
how did the beginning of the war affect your life directly?
Well, it didn't make much difference. I didn't start in 1941. I didn't get in until 1944. I had a little physical thing that kept me out, and had that corrected and got in. And
what made you, were you drafted or?
Drafted, yeah.
When were you drafted?
Well, August of 1944, August 12th, I believe it was.
August 12th.
Yeah.
And where was this? Where were you drafted?
Oh, I mean the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Fort Leavenworth, Kansas.
Okay. How did you go there?
Went from there to Camp Robinson, Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. Then, before I got through basic training, the Battle of the Bulls took place. Mm-hmm. And didn't quite get through basic, and they pulled everybody out of basic training that had very much training at all. And went from there. Where did we go? Went to New Jersey and stayed Fort Meade, Maryland first, and then I think stayed there a week or so, and then up to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, and then on the ship on the Queen Elizabeth, and we were on the way overseas. So.
What do you remember about basic training?
Well, I thought it was rough at first. Then after 3 weeks, you don't care anymore. It's whatever they tell you, well, that's all right. You just go ahead and do it. Don't think any more about it.
So what are some things they made you go through and learn during basic training?
Well, that's been 50-some years ago. So. Well, it seemed like you marched a lot. You march and you drill and you fire your rifles and you hit the targets down there 50 yards away, 100 yards, 300, 500 yards away. More marching. Sleep out in the pup tents. They're big enough for 2 men if they're not too big. And if it rains, well, you stay out in the rain. You don't come in just because it rains. So.
Did you communicate with your parents? How did you communicate with them?
Well, you could write. There's no problem. In the States, you could write. No problem there. Didn't get censored there.
What did your parents think about you being drafted?
Well, I didn't have any mother at that time. So, well, I was 26 years old, so I had to be drafted. Well, I had to be drafted. Just couldn't help it. So.
What do you, like, who's the first person in the military that you would remember?
You mean a name?
Or just a person if you just would like to describe them?
Gosh almighty. Seemed like there were so many people that you had contact with. I can't remember any first person that...
How about some of your officers or commanding?
I can't remember a name of any.
Any friends?
Anyway.
Any friends of yours?
Well, none of them were any friends. None of the officers were.
Or just like, you know, just other draftees, I guess. You know,
oh, yeah, there were thousands of draftees, but I don't remember any names of them.
You don't stay in contact with any of them?
No.
Okay. What did you, during basic training, and it was still, you were still in California, right? Or no, sorry, you were in Kansas.
Oh, basic training was Arkansas.
Arkansas, sorry. Yeah. What did you do on your spare time there?
Well, if you had any, well, it seemed like you kept you busy more than you had spare time. If you had spare time, you'd go into Little Rock. That was the nearest town, big town. Maybe on a Saturday night or a Sunday or something like that. And that's all the spare time you had. Other times they had something for you to do. Spare time was a luxury you didn't have.
How about any girlfriends at this time?
Didn't have time for that. No.
So after basic training, where did you go?
Well, where did we go? Fort Meade, Maryland. And then to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey for a couple of days, and then up to New York City and loaded on the Queen Elizabeth.
How did you go up to New York?
Train. They traveled by train then.
How long was the train ride?
How long? From where to where?
The train ride to New York.
Oh, from Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. That was just a short ride. I don't think an hour or two or so.
So what was the feelings? What was the mood, you know, between the men before your ship were going up?
I don't know. I think everybody must have had his own thoughts. Didn't seem like anybody communicated anything.
What were you thinking?
It's been too long ago. I knew I was on the way, I guess, so.
Were you scared?
No, don't think so.
So did you get any leave, and did you have time to do anything in New York before you left?
Nope, we got directly off the train onto the ferry boat across Hudson River, I think, over to the pier and loaded on the ship. There was no time for anything.
So how long were you on the ship?
I believe 5 or 5.5 days to Scotland. They didn't run the Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth up into France or anywhere. They kept it to the North Atlantic. And then rode Greenock, Scotland, I think it was, and then rode a troop train, stayed there just a few hours, and then on a troop train down to southern England. Stayed down there a couple of more days and got on an LCI, landing craft infantry, and crossed the channel. And remember, it took all night to cross the channel and landed at Le Havre, France. That's when I first saw my first destruction then. That's when it boggles your mind.
So when did you join the 12th?
12th was in January of 1945, late January, somewhere along 25th. I don't know the date.
Okay. So with what group were you shipped over to New York, from New York?
What now?
With what group?
Well, it was just replacements, all replacements. No group. They got assigned after they got to Europe.
Okay.
Just a bunch of guys out of basic and fresh out of basic and not assigned anywhere.
So what were your thoughts about the war at that time?
Oh, shucks, I didn't think much about it. It was just going on, and I didn't think about it.
Okay. So you crossed the channel to Le Havre, and tell me about that first sight.
About what now?
You said you saw combat?
No, not combat there. I mean, after it all, what had happened months or weeks or probably months before, when, you know, like buildings blown to bits and cities blown away, and what do I do next?
Did you have any encounters with the French?
Very little, very little. I don't remember anything, but it just seemed like we all stayed in a group. And so many of us, they just stayed bunched up, I guess.
So from Le Havre, where did you move?
Well, best I remember, we rode around a troop train, a 40 and 8. You ever hear of a 40 and 8 boxcar?
Mm-hmm.
40 men or 8 horses, not simultaneously. They might rode around over France for a few days, and then finally got someplace to a replacement depot, and then got assigned to the 12th. And rode for miles in an army truck to get to where we were supposed to be, where we went with the 12th, but I don't know what date it was.
Do you know where was it that you met up with the 12th?
Around, what's the name of that town?
Cherbourg?
No, eastern, around, there's a big town there in eastern France. I can't think of the name of it. You do that when you get 2 times 41. You don't.
In southern France?
Yeah, southeastern France, sort of. Well, I wish I could think of it, but if I had a map, I could tell, but.
Okay. So you met up with them. Like, what's the first thing you remember about the 12th?
Well, just remember they said something like you're here in a little old village, barns and people and livestock. People live in the same building, livestock down below and people up above. Seemed like we stayed around there 2 or 3 days, and all went riding in a half track and rode.
What were you trained to do?
Well, I was supposed to be a combat infantryman, but trained with an M1 rifle, and got in a squad where we put a squad in a half track and rode around for 2 or 3 days. And that, it seemed like, stop and go and in and out of it.
And who was your commander?
That I don't know. See, I told you I was so brief with it, so briefly, I never had time to get acquainted with anyone.
Did you bond with any of the other men?
Did I what?
Did you bond? Did you make friends?
Didn't have time, no. I remember one that I was with for 2 or 3 days till we got into combat, and then got wounded immediately, so just lost track of everybody.
So tell me about your first combat. Like, where's the first?
Well, I said there were some Germans down there and go down to a vineyard, and so we started down to a vineyard. Some mortar shells started coming over, and about 6 of them, and one number 6 is one that got me, and that was the end of it for me. So my military career wasn't very illustrious.
So where did you end up when you got hurt? Where did they take you?
Oh, that's about 5 or 6 different hospitals in France. It seemed like, I can't remember the names of them, but at Nancy, France for a while, then to get stabilized, then down to Marseille, France, to at a station hospital. I think stayed there about almost 2 months. Then got on a hospital ship to come back to the States. Got through the Mediterranean and straight to Gibraltar. And across the Atlantic is a little old ship. I remember it was stormy for about 5 days. The front end would go up about 40 feet and fall about 80 feet or something like that. And landed in Charleston, South Carolina.
How did the French, who was it that treated you in the hospital?
Well,
was it French nurses? Or just
no, it was all Americans. There might have been a few Frenchmen that I don't remember any of them. I think had more German PWs working in the hospital in Marseille, France, than they did French.
How was the mood in the hospital?
Whose mood?
Everybody's.
Oh, I don't know. I guess there wasn't so much pain and misery. I didn't pay much attention. If anything, you get a limb blown off, why you don't want that to happen a second time. If anything hurts like that again, you don't want to be here. You just want to go on out.
So what is it that keeps you going in moments like that?
Well, I don't know what makes you go.
What kept you going?
What kept me going? Oh, well, just tough enough to take it, I guess. I never thought about what kept me going. I just kept living from one day to the next.
What did you want to do when you got back to the States?
Well, I mean, want to do about what?
Just the rest of your life, did you think about that?
I didn't think much about it. I just kind of take it a day at a time.
Did you communicate with your parents when you were in the hospital?
No, I couldn't write or anything. And well, see, I didn't have any mother then, so I think somebody may have written a time or two to a sister or somebody, at Red Cross or somebody like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after France, you were shipped. Where were you shipped first on your way home?
I mean, in the States?
Mm-hmm. From France. Where did you go?
Well, came to South Carolina.
Okay.
Then stayed there about a week in Charleston, South Carolina, and got sent to Temple, Texas for about two and a half months or something like that. And that was an amputation center. Then I got sent from there back home, back to Springfield, Missouri, where they had a plastic surgery hospital to get the hand patched up. It took about 4 months to do that. Then after that, I got sent to Brigham City, Utah. That's where there's another amputation center, and got finished up there. Got fitted up with an artificial arm, but wasn't much good. They're just not any good when you got that much of an amputation. And that's where I got discharged from.
Did you receive any medals for your bravery?
Did I what?
Did you receive any medals?
Oh, Purple Heart Combat Infantry badge. I didn't think I was there long enough to get them, but they gave them to me anyway. Somebody did.
Where did you receive your medal? Where did you receive
Where? Oh, Purple Heart got that while I was still in France. They just came through the hospital ward with a box full of them, just handing them out like that, or right and left. So then I got the Combat Infantry badge after I got back to the States, I think, while I was in the O'Reilly General Hospital in Springfield. Said I hadn't been awarded it, so that's the way it was.
Did you have any particular feelings about the medal that you received?
Have what?
Any particular feelings about?
No, I didn't think about it. I didn't think I earned them, but I guess I did. Somebody decided I did.
So what did you do after the war, after you'd been in the hospital?
Well, let's see, got discharged, got enough compensation to live on, so I didn't worry much about working. I never did much like to work anyway, so it worked out all right for me. May not get many interviews like this, but that's the way it was.
So have you been traveling then, I guess, or what have you been doing? What have you been doing since?
Oh, well, let's see, I got married in April of 1947, about, 14 months after I got out, something like that. Raised 2 sons and 3 granddaughters, 4 great grandchildren. So worked as county tax assessor one time, got elected, political job, had that for 8 years, and that was a pressure cooker kind of job. So I think that gave me ulcers and high blood pressure, so when my 8 years was up, I let somebody else have it.
When you look back at the war, what would be the first thing that you think about?
First thing I would do?
That you think about when you look back at the war?
I don't think I ever looked back at it. It's in the past, 4 or 5 years in the past. I don't think much about it anymore.
So how did you hear about the 12th Armored Association?
Well, first I read about it in either Legion magazine or VFW magazine, little ad in there for a reunion. And whoever was the chairman of the reunion, I wrote to him and never did get a reply from him. And I just let it slide, didn't think any more about it till about 1984. About 1955 or 56 when I first inquired about it. It's kind of a roundabout way when I got into it, 12th Armored Division. One of the 17th men goes pheasant hunting out in South Dakota, and he met up with some kinfolks of mine out there. He had my name and a book and address, and so he wanted to know, asked them if they knew me, and they found out I was a relative. So then he got in touch with me, and that was back 1984, I believe it was. So I've been a member of the 12th Armored Association since 1984.
Oh, that's great.
15 years.
Do you have any of the people that were in the association that you were with, in the 17th?
Not a one that I know of. Well, I told you I didn't get acquainted with anyone.
So how many days were you actually in the 12th?
Well, I'm not sure what day I went into it. Around the 25th or 6th of January probably, and got wounded February the 4th, so that wouldn't have been but about 10 or 11 days. So I just, like I said, I didn't have much to offer.
Where was it that you got wounded?
Around the Colmar sector, they called it.
Would you like to tell me about that day?
Do I?
Do you want to tell me about that day? Do you remember?
Well, I remember we bunked up in some old building, a school building or something like that for a while, and then somebody rousted us out early in the morning, said we got to go attack some Germans or something, if I remember right. So where'd we go? Got in a half track and rode someplace else and got out of it, and then they said go down a hillside there across the vineyard, and that's when I got hit. And the worst part of it was some of our own stuff. It wasn't enemy stuff.
What was it that hit you?
Mortar. I don't know whether it was a 60 millimeter or an 81 millimeter, one or the other.
What went through your head during this?
A lot of pain. I mean, when you get hit like that, I don't know, nothing goes through your head. It's so painful you can't think anymore.
And then the men helped you to a hospital?
Yeah, I don't know whether I got picked up in 2 minutes or 10 minutes or how many, but I got picked up by some French soldiers. Got loaded on the hood of a Jeep and hauled to an aid station up the road someplace. I don't know how far or where at, but that's where it was.
Do you have any other things that you want to mention, like that?
Do what?
Do you have anything else you want to tell me that I haven't?
On my first day, it seemed like I rode in ambulances all day. It seemed like I'd go a while and stop and get checked a little bit and get into another ambulance and go someplace else. I think they want to get you back as far from the front lines as possible if you're able to do it.
Did you have some encounters? Did you talk to the people that you were staying in the hospital with?
Well, you mean like other patients? Or oh yeah, you talk to them all right, but I don't remember what about or anything.
Do you keep contact with them?
Oh no, I had one I kept contact with. The only one I'd ever and I met him in the hospital and stayed in contact with him. Then he died about 30 years ago, so that's all I ever stayed in contact with.
What was his name? Do you remember?
Joseph Joska.
And what did he do in the war?
Well, I don't know. I guess he was an infantryman. I met him in the hospital. He lost a leg and was already wounded when I met him. So that's about it then.
Okay. Well, do we have any other questions? I guess not. Thank you so much.